some trough. And therefore, our statement of policy, which is our desired end state within the maritime domain, is indeed encapsulated by Sagar. Maritime policy is Sagar. Sagar is not some vision of the Prime Minister of India. Sagar is not some dream. Sagar is a policy. It is the encapsulation, it's an acronym for the maritime policy of India. This is something that must be borne in mind, because all too often I find people saying that Sagar is a vision, Sagar vision. The Sagar is not a vision. Sagar is a policy. And when we talk about security and growth for all in the region, we find ourselves on somewhat shakier ground, because when we are talking about this, we have to understand what kind of security are we talking about. So security is certainly more than just military security. Security is obviously more than military security. It has several dimensions. It has a political dimension, an economic dimension, a societal dimension, an environmental dimension, and of course a military dimension. It is arguable that the military dimension is the most important of all, maybe, but yet it is only one out of many. Similarly, if security is more than military security alone, maritime is more than just the Navy Coast Guard amalgam. This is really quite important for India and Indians to recognize. Maritime is more than just Navy Coast Guard activity, and security is more than military security alone. So as I said, our maritime policy is wrapped in the acronym Sagar. And if you look at how Sagar actually works, this is our dime. Can you see the slide number 25?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, so DIME is diplomatic, informational, military, and economic outreach of India through the region. This is Sagar. This is our visual depiction of the policy of Sagar. And if you go, let me make another introduction to you of a really important concept, which is the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, or the IPOI. Now, the IPOI is not pronounceable. It doesn't translate into IPOI. It doesn't translate into IPOA. It is just IPOI. It is the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. It was launched, as you are probably aware, at the 14th East Asia Summit. And it is an open, non-treaty-based global initiative aimed at cooperatively assessing and addressing maritime challenges that the international community faces in the Indo-Pacific. And you can see that what it does, why it's important for me to tell you this, is that the IPOI provides first order specificity to Sagar. I meet many chaps and they say, "Hi, Admiral, what is happening in Sagar?" And I look at them and say, "What have you been smoking?" Nothing is happening in Sagar. Sagar is a policy. A policy is a statement of the desired end state. Now, to give first order specificity to Sagar, which is our policy, you have the IPOI. And the IPOI lays down 7 lines of thrust, which the Ministry of External Affairs unfortunately has called pillars. And it's unfortunate because the word pillars automatically implies some sort of silos. Whereas, as you can see in this diagram, the IPOI is better thought of as a web with 7 spokes, which are deeply interconnected at all conceivable levels, and one cannot be isolated from the other. Now, several nations have already volunteered to lead one or more of the 7 lines of thrust that you can see on your screen. So you've got, maritime resources, where France and Indonesia have said, we can take the lead. And what does all that mean? Australia says we can do that same in ecology. India and the UK say we'll handle maritime security. What does that mean? So to understand that, I want to be able to emphasize that what the IPOI is not is as important as understanding what the IPOI is. The IPOI is not some grand plan of India's, which nations can choose to join or not join. It is not some grand plan of India's which nations can accept or reject. IPOI just says, hi, in the Indo-Pacific, there are these 7 things that need to be done. Does anybody have an idea? You have an idea? Great. Would you like to join us? Would you like us to lead and you would like to follow? No. How about if you lead and we follow? No. How about if we go hand in hand jointly? Is that okay? No. You don't want us there at all? Anything is okay, so long as the issues are being addressed. Similarly, and importantly, the IPOI is not about SDG 14 alone. The IPOI is about all 17 of the SDGs. From there, we come down to what is our principal maritime interest. What is our principal national interest? It is the economic, material, societal well-being of the people of India. What is our principal maritime interest? It is holistic maritime security. I cannot emphasize the word holistic strongly enough. Holistic maritime security has been defined at the prime ministerial level of India as freedom from threats arising in the sea or from the sea or through the sea. These threats could be man-made, they could be natural, they could be combinations of the two. Man-made threats are subdivided, as you can see, into traditional and non-traditional ones. You're familiar with all of this, so I will not need to waste too much time on reading them out. You could, of course, take a couple of seconds and have a look at all of this. Natural threats are cyclones, tsunamis, and combinations, of course, incorporate issues such as climate change, ocean acidification, challenges of the area beyond national jurisdiction, which is ABNJ, challenges beyond biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, which is BBNJ, for which you are aware that there's the new treaty. And so, having outlined what our principal maritime interest is, it is perhaps time to take a look at the geographical context, which is the Indo-Pacific. And the Indo-Pacific is a predominantly, but certainly not exclusively, maritime space. And our Prime Minister had said that, in the Shangri-La Dialogue in 2018, he said that it extends, the geographical extent of India's concept of the Indo-Pacific extends from the shore of East Africa to the shores of the Americas. Now, people tell us, I say, Admiral, that's a great thing for a Prime Minister to say, but this is a very large, huge, vast oceanic space. Do you have any resources? And so I normally say, what should we do, guys? What should we do? Should we remember to cut our coat according to our cloth, as mommy and daddy and all our teachers have taught us? Or should we weave our cloth according to the coat that we want? At this point, I need to check, Shamaji, are we on slide 37?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're moving fast. I can go faster then. What should we do? And the guys say, Admiral, that's really a neat turn of phrase. Angrezi tumhari thos aur muhavredar hai, but it still needs resources. Do you have the resources? And the answer to that lies in an understanding of the difference between two very distinct words which are used interchangeably in India. One is capacity and the other is capability. We use one for the other. We use anything. In India, actually, we use any word for any word. We are very bad at terminological exactitude. But capacity and capability need to be distinguished. Capacity is, in fact, all material wherewithal. Capacity is ship, aircraft, submarine, patrol boat, fishing vessel, dockyard, dry dock, university. All of this is capacity. Capability, on the other hand, refers to the realization and honing of domain-specific aptitude or skill sets, and is mostly intangible and a cognitive set of processes: organization, training, maintenance, operational exploitation. So guys, you don't have a patrol boat. I give you a patrol boat. I have doubled your capacity. But do you know how to operate the boat? Do you know how to deploy the boat? Have you got an operation come refit cycle for the boat? Do you have an operation come maintenance process for the boat? Is there a training is there a training network? Yes. Is there a legal structure to support it? Yes. If the answer is yes, 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 and yes, wow, you have capability. If the answer is no, 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 and no, I'm afraid you only have a liability. And so in India, India, we may have limits in terms of spare capacity, but India certainly has more than adequate capability. And so we in India, we must play to our strengths and not simply ape the strengths of other people, which might well be weaknesses of our own. I keep telling this to the European Union, that you don't have capacity and you're going on lamenting that you don't have capacity, you only have 2 boats or 1 ship, but you have huge capability. Why won't you play to your strength? Why are you trying to copy those countries which have got spare capacity? A country that has spare capacity will always throw capacity at a problem. क्या है problem? क्या है? 2 जहाज भेज दो. Give them 2 more helicopters, 5 more submarines, 3 more ships. अरे, but can he operate them? Does he know how to use them? Can he deploy them? If he can't, then you are wasting your time. India may not have enough capacity, but India has hell of a lot of capability. And that is what we will leverage as we proceed down and provide ourselves with the resources that we now need. So the Indo-Pacific constructs of Japan, ASEAN, the European Union, Netherlands, France, Germany, UK, all coincide with that of India in that they encompass the entire Indian Ocean and the entire Pacific Ocean. And yet, even for countries that don't have such a coincidence with ours, like Australia and the USA, there is increasing strategic convergence. And strategic convergence is not only shared interests, but values and so on and so forth. And the number of policy fields in which you have this convergence and the depth to which you have the strategic convergence across them, this is giving rise to a new hierarchy of strategic partnerships. On your screen, you can see, hopefully, the standard defense ally, the alliance partners of the USA and the Indo-Pacific. But what we are proposing is that, hello, this is all old hat. And what you are now looking at is a whole hierarchy of strategic partnerships. Say, for example, take India being at the heart of many of them. So we have strategic partnerships. We have special strategic partnerships, such as a green strategic partnership. We have comprehensive strategic partnerships, strategic and global partnerships, special and privileged strategic partnerships, and comprehensive global strategic partnerships. All of them involve countries, and the position of that country is a function of how many policy fields do we share congruence in, and to what depth. And this is becoming a more and more attractive way of banding countries together rather than forcing them to sign military alliances. And that brings us, with the geographic context having been covered, that brings us to our objectives. Now, our objectives are not formally promulgated by the government of India, which does not release white papers. And so these are derived through strenuous analysis. And you can now see the 8 principal or major or maritime objectives of India on your screen. And I'll read them out very quickly. It's protection from sea-based threats to India's territorial integrity. Number 2 is stability, peace and prosperity in India's maritime neighborhood. Number 3 is the creation, development, and sustenance of a blue economy. I've spent, I don't know how many years now struggling to rescue the blue economy from economists. We'll talk about that in a subsequent lecture, perhaps, because the blue economy, the wrong question to ask is, how much is the blue contributing to my economy? The right question is, how blue is your economy? In short, guys, what should be, if we calculate our GDP, what should be the value that we assign to, say, a mangrove forest? Should it be the cost of the wood? Should it be the cost of the carbon that it sequesters? What should be the cost of a whale? Should it be the cost of the blubber, of the meat, of the carbon? What should we be doing? So this is really an important point. The creation, development of the sustenance of a blue economy which is resilient against the adverse impacts of climate change. The fourth is the preservation, promotion, pursuit, and protection of offshore infrastructure and maritime resources within and beyond the maritime zones of India. The fifth is the protection, promotion, and safety of India's overseas and coastal seaborne trade and our sea lines of communication, and the ports that constitute the nodes of this trade. Remember that India is seeking to move from a $3 trillion economy to a $13 trillion economy by 2030. If it wants to do this, it has to concentrate upon trade, upon external trade, because India cannot achieve that through internal demand and supply alone. And the next one is the support to marine scientific research, including that in Antarctica and the Arctic. And people tell me, I say, Admiral, yeah, tu to thoda carried away nahi ho raha hai. Arctic and Antarctic, how is Antarctica the blinking maritime interest of India? You know, guys, Antarctica is a maritime interest of India, not because it has the largest reservoir of untapped mineral resources, not because it has the largest reservoir of untapped petroleum resources, not even because it has the largest reservoir of untapped nutritional resources by way of krill. Antarctica is a maritime interest of India because when we study Antarctica, we are able to predict with accuracy the Indian monsoon. And when we get the monsoon correct, we get our agriculture correct. And when we get our agriculture correct, we get our economy correct. And when we get our economy correct, we are a power. This is why Antarctica is a maritime interest of India. The seventh is the promotion, support, succor, and extrication options to the Indian diaspora. And of course, the last but not the least is obtaining and retaining a favorable maritime position. It's really important for me to tell you that, and for you to appreciate that India's principal maritime interest and India's 8 principal maritime objectives are determined solely by India. They are not a function of any other nation. How difficult it is to attain them, how easy it is to attain them, those are functions of everybody else, but not the objectives themselves. Those are India's. In fact, if I took a magical eraser and simply wiped out China from the face of the earth, I actually tried to do this in this slide number 48. I hope it's on the screen, Professor Sharma.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So even if we could, it was great fun, but even if we could magically erase China from the face of the earth, it will not change a single one of India's maritime objectives one whit. India's maritime objectives are India's. And that finally brings us to strategies. And when we talk about strategies, we must appreciate that strategy, as spoken by Senior Captain Shu Qi of China, is a country's effort in the world arena to exploit its geographic location and use geographic orientation to pursue and safeguard its national interests. What does that mean? I don't know. Do you know what it means? It means that every country has a set of has 2 types of thrust lines for its geostrategy. The first is geographic. Its position is fixed. So this indicates that we can't, what should I say? We are India, guys. We are the land of magic. We can make anything happen here. We can do the Indian rope trick. We can have naked fakirs lie on beds of nails. We can do anything. We are magic. We are India, but we cannot take geography. We cannot change geography. If we could, I would take Pakistan and put it in central Texas. But we cannot. And therefore, geographic position is a fixed one. But there is a second one, and that is geographic orientation. This is a variable. And it is also known as our strategic culture. And it comprises a set of 3 basic features. One is scholarship. The other is a deep study of history and lessons drawn from historical experience. And the third is the ability to identify and differentiate between a threat, an interest, and a risk. And all too often we have these peculiar gentlemen who come on television, national television, and thunderously ask our government, why doesn't the government tell us what is the bloody threat? And I cannot ask them, what does that mean? Do you not know what your interests are? Protect your interests, your threats will be taken care of automatically. And so in essence, the essence of geostrategy is actually summed up by Miles' law, which says that where one stands depends upon where one sits. And India is quite clear that she sits at the junction of the several international shipping lanes that crisscross the Indian Ocean, and that is what determines much of our geostrategic perspective. Today, India's grand strategy, India's military strategy, and India's maritime strategy are all increasingly being drawn on contextualized to the Indo-Pacific, and this is our strategic geography. Now I've introduced a new term. ये strategic geography क्या चीज़ है यार? And how does it differ from real geography? कुछ बताओ. So let's take a map or a chart. And on that map or chart, if we were to draw a series of latitudes and longitudes, right? And then we were to take a pencil or a pen and join these latitudes and longitudes. And in the area that has been so encompassed, if we were to concentrate much of our grand strategy, then the area that has been encompassed will become known as our strategic geography. Clearly, guys, clearly, the strategic geography of Tonga will not be the same as the strategic geography of India. The strategic geography of India will not be the same as the strategic geography of Iceland. The strategic geography of Iceland will not be the same as the strategic geography of Sri Lanka. Every nation will have a strategic geography of its own. And the name that we have chosen to give to our strategic geography is the Indo-Pacific. We are a sovereign power. Other sovereign powers may decide to give their strategic geographies the same name, but their strategic geography need not be the same as ours. It's the same thing as saying, how many people do you not know by the name of Devnath Sahu? There are many Devnath Sahus, and yet it is nobody's case that every Devnath Sahu should be by boundary exactly the same as every other Devnath Sahu, simply because their name is Devnath Sahu. Nobody thinks like that. But as soon as you say Indo-Pacific, we get our knickers into a complete knot. Why is his Indo-Pacific not the same as my Indo-Pacific? This question is best addressed and answered and asked by people who are vela, who have no work. So I think that we don't fit into that category. As far as India is concerned, our core national interest, as I said before, drawn from the Constitution of India in the directive principles of state policy, is to assure the economic, material, and societal well-being of the people of India. And insofar as the Indo-Pacific is concerned, this will remain our principal area. Today, we must contend with two Indias of equal area. One is continental, the other is maritime. We have a land India of 3.2 million square kilometers, and we have a maritime India of 3.2 million square kilometers. So India's challenge will always be how to achieve the right balance between maritime and land-based geopolitical imperatives. And that brings me to the last bit, which is India's maritime strategies. Now, when I say last bit, I would like you to all remember that this subject is something that we normally take a number of lectures and number of presentations to put forth. And if the Shiksha Anusandhan University is gracious and kind enough to call me physically, as has been promised, or this very tantalizing promise has been held out by Professor Sharma, as also by your Vice Chancellor, I would be delighted to have a series running rather than only one-off. But today I can only have enough time to cover bits. And this will only provide you with, I hope, a sense of keen appetite for the main courses. So let me turn to India's maritime interest and emphasize that the next 2 centuries, guys, the next 2 centuries are going to be centuries of the sea and of space. And in these 2 centuries, over the course of these 2 centuries, India will either be a maritime power or India will not be any kind of power at all. You sit in Odisha. It is the state that has historically led the Indian maritime endeavor, and it was the state that will do so in the future as well. Or it will fail, and the country will fail with it. So this ability to use the seas for one's own purposes while dissuading or deterring or preventing other people from using them in ways that are to our disadvantage, this ability, which ability? To use the seas for what? For our own purposes, while dissuading, deterring, and preventing other people from using them in ways that are to our disadvantage. This constitutes maritime power. This is what is maritime power. It is military, political, and economic power exerted through the ability to use the seas. And India's maritime power will always be a direct function of India's principal maritime interest, which has been repeatedly explained as being freedom from threats arising in the sea, from the sea, or through the sea. Now, the military component of India's maritime power is embodied in the Indian Navy as naval power. But maritime power is not equal to naval power. It's not the same. There are many components of maritime power that have no involvement of naval power. Here's a list. The dependence upon the sea for national and economic well-being, the maritime bent of mind of the government and of the people, the size and enterprise of the seafaring population, the shipbuilding capacity and capability of the nation, state size and technological advancement of the coastal and deep sea fishing fleets and their geographical spread, the size, age, and condition of the nation's merchant fleet, coastal and foreign going, what percentage of imports and exports are carried in our flag ships as opposed to those flying foreign flags, what should be the number, types, and functional efficiency of our major and minor ports, and the infrastructure for multimodal transport of sea. Any Navy in all this? You see Navy anywhere? Navy, Navy, no, Navy, no, Navy, Navy, no, Navy, no. No Navy. And yet, it is nobody's argument that these are not components of maritime power. So guys, it's quite clear that naval power is therefore a subset of maritime power. And yet, naval power is the enabling instrument that allows other components of maritime power to be exercised and in many cases even to exist. So naval power is also the preventive instrument which denies others the use of the seas in ways that are to India's disadvantage. And how this whole structure is looking in typology is like this. The whole business of trying to pursue India's maritime interest rests upon two basic pillars. The red one is maritime hard security, which is naval power. And the blue one, which is the blue economy, is holistic maritime security, comprising all the things that you see on the left extremity of your slide. Both these pillars must rest upon a legal framework in which national or municipal law is reconciled with duly ratified international law. This is the weakest, lousiest, most useless segment of our entire typology. It is here that we have the largest weakness. So all you people who are either knowing or studying law or knowing people who study law, this element, this foundational framework is what is the weakest, and we can dwell upon that at some length, and we should. So insofar as strategies are concerned, indicative strategies for India in times of peace revolve around a simple concept of constructive engagement, while in times of tension, our principal approach is that of distraction, and in times of conflict, of course, we have strategies for how we will deal with either of or all or both or many of our present or future adversaries. India's fundamental strategy within the maritime domain, as I said, is constructive engagement. And insofar as the region is concerned, the regional stability imperative is driven. It generates from our belief in Zoltan Mertz's famous comment, money is a coward. money does not go where there is turbulence and risk. Can you see all those blotches in red here? Money doesn't go anywhere here. Do we want money? Of course we want money. Why do we want money? Because our principal national interest is the economic, material, and societal well-being of the people of India, and that requires money, 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 money in all forms, money in the form of money, cash, in forms of investment, direct foreign investment, in terms of trade, in every form that money can take. Money must come, money must go, money must flow. For that, in order that money flows, the region must be stable. We want the money. Therefore, as a nation, we are driven to promote, to support, and in many cases, to create regional maritime stability. That's why we are doing this. Now, currently, India is concentrating upon 5 major but very different approaches for its endeavors vis-a-vis constructive engagement. But before I go any further, I'm conscious of the time, so I wanted to ask Professor Sharma, should we stop at this point and continue in the next lecture, or do I continue now?
Sir, I think you can wrap it up in another 5 minutes. Then we can have 5 minutes question answer, and we can have the second part, maybe physically or we can find out some ways, sir.
All right. Thank you so much. So I will wrap up basically here, because if we talk about multilateral constructs, this is the first of 5, and let's see how fast I can go through 5, because I do want to interact, as if it's possible, with the audience. The first of these is multilateral constructs within the Indian Ocean. Now, this is a sequential slide, so watch out. This is the Arab League when it first started with its 6 members, then it moves on to 23 members thereafter. And now we have the SADC, the Southern Africa Development Council, in 1980. And yet we don't have any Venn diagram. This is not a Venn diagram. This is a hen that has successfully laid 2 andas. The Venn diagram starts in 1981 with the Gulf Cooperation Council. And then by 1986, we have the Indian Ocean Commission, conjoining France, India, Mauritius, Madagascar, and the Comoros. In 1988, there is the Western Pacific Naval Symposium, and the reason it is important here is because Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, France, Australia, India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand, and Pakistan are all simultaneously members of the Indian Ocean. And then we have in 1997, the advent of IORA and BIMSTEC, which you're familiar with. And then that leads us further to the next point, where we have the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, of which Professor Sharma made mention in introducing me. And IONS, this one is pronounceable. IONS is the single largest, most inclusive structure, and we hope to be able to leverage it fully. Then we've got the Quad, as you know, in 2007 and again in 2018. And that really yields us these structures. Remember, for us, the Indo-Pacific goes all the way to East Africa. And so Africa is really important. The African structures are studied deeply. Particularly, the case with the Djibouti Code of Conduct and Jeddah Amendment, and the 2050 Africa Integrated Maritime Strategy, known as AIMS. So the Djibouti Code of Conduct is something that India has joined in August of 2020 as an observer, but India is very, very active in this now. And so this is a major thrust line for our country. We are the Indo-Pacific, so we have to look at Pacific constructs, but those you are much more familiar with. So I don't need to sequentially show them. I'll just show them to you in generic form, and they are sequentially available on the slide. So wrapping up this particular first of the five approaches, every regional security structure must have at least 3 layers: a conceptual layer, a political layer, and an executive layer that will actually do the doing, because you can't do this by sitting in university or sitting in a think tank. You have to actually go to sea. So the conceptual layer could be SAGAR and IPOI. We think it is that. The political layer, we think, is the East Asia Summit, which is a leaders-led summit. But the executive layer, for certain, is an amalgam between the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium and the Western Pacific Naval Symposium, for the reasons that I've already mentioned, of the 9 countries that are common to both these constructs. Our second strategic approach is, of course, the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, of which I've spoken at some length. Once again, I'll just flash this for you to have a quick glance before moving to our third approach. So the first one was multilateral constructs. Second one is IPOI. Third one is minilaterals such as BIMSTEC. India has 7 maritime minilaterals. There's trilaterals. There's India, Brazil, South Africa, India, USA, Japan, India, Japan, Italy, India, Indonesia, Australia, India, Australia, France, India, France, UAE, and of course, the Colombo Security Conclave, which is India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Mauritius, Maldives, and the Seychelles. And the fourth structure, our fourth approach is through the Quad, which is a function of India, Japan, USA, and Australia. I'm sure you are well familiar. I don't need to dwell upon the Quad. But the fifth approach is the proactive promotion of connectivity. Now, here, I want to end with this. Here, you know, when we talk about connectivity, people think that connectivity is only what the Prime Minister said. Or people think connectivity is some kind of password. There's one chap, you know, with his arms like this, and he's standing there in front of the Lutyens Bungalow Zone party that you want to go to, and he says, "Nahi aana andar. Password kya hai?" And you said, "Password, password, password, maritime connectivity." And he immediately smiles and he said, "Andar aa jaiye." And you go there, go inside. There are 300 people who also only know that much, that maritime connectivity is a password. Maritime connectivity has 6 basic elements that you have to understand. What are the ports that you want to be connected? What's the medium through which this connectivity is to be maintained? What are the platforms that will enable the connectivity? What are the items that will be carried on these platforms? What are the policies that you want to put in place? And what is the rules-based legal or other normative process or order that underpins all this? And with that having been said and will be dwelt upon in greater detail in future, I will bring my somewhat breathless presentation to this particular part to a close, reminding you that this is only the first of hopefully many. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your brilliant lecture. I think you have pumped informations of 5 lectures into a 45-minute lecture. So many informations. I was reminded of Byron's 2-liners. Could love forever flow like a river? Could Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhan ji flow like a river? So it was such a brilliant. I have heard you in NMF, and everybody, including a lot of my acquaintances, they always tell that you are such a brilliant speaker, and definitely the university will feel privileged and happy to host you for a physical lecture, sir. I think because we have less time and there are 367 attendees, I will request His Excellency Dr. Basham Al Khatib, the Honorable Ambassador of the Arab Republic of Syria. Sir, if you have got any questions, we'll be very happy. You can ask to the Vice Admirals. Excellency, are you? Am I audible? Otherwise, I will just have a question, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please.
Okay, thank you, dear Professor. Actually, I will be as appropriate as possible. I would love not to repeat the gratitude you have mentioned for His Excellency the Admiral, but I will go to the point. How do you see an Arab-Indian channel of maritime cooperation? Is it a semi-reality, or it will take a longer time compared to the idea of connectivity? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Maritime connectivity with the Arab world is embedded crucially within the construct of the IMEC, which is the India, Middle East, Europe transport corridor. And how quickly will it happen you can see that the urgency of this and the importance of this is manifesting itself in a number of peculiar ways. There are countries, and they are not countries, but there are entities that are keen to disrupt this kind of connectivity. Do we want the connectivity to stop at the shores of the Arab states? Of course not. We want that the Arab states, India, this maritime connectivity should connect ports between India, ports on the shorelines of the Arab states, ports on the hinterland of the Arab states. And by Arab states, I do not mean only states which are on the west of the Suez Canal. I also incorporate all states which are east in the Eastern Mediterranean. So all of these, all of this is not only urgent, but it is also happening. And I think that the thanks for this goes to all countries that participated in the G20 in general, and most certainly to India's leadership in particular. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Excellency, for your kind questions and the way the speaker explained the questions. Now we'll take one or two questions from the audience. Anybody who can, either you can put it into your chat, anybody, or in the meantime, let me ask a question, sir. You talk about geopolitics, two things: interpersonal relations between political leaders, and the other one is the instruments of foreign policy, consisting of diplomacy, economy, and military. Of course, economy may be an end, and it cannot be a means also, because ultimately everything is directed towards that. How do you, because on the basis of the last 10 years, maybe, I think for a country, for a long planning for a long-range foreign policy, whether the instruments of foreign policy carry more weight or the interpersonal relations between political leaders?
Thank you very much for that rather astute question, as expected. I just want to emphasize that, the answer is that no policy of a large nation can be done over, 1 week, or you can't just wake up one day and say, okay, I forgot all. It's just like doing a major examination. You have to be studying all along, or you will make significant mistakes towards the end when you're doing some cramming and some desperate work, or some, cancellation, ye sawal nahi aayega, wo sawal nahi aayega. Now, what it means is that in many cases, the Indian foreign policy the instruments of Indian foreign policy have been wielded without adequate dexterity, without adequate skill. And consequently, the government in power is forced to now look at quick fix solutions to areas which were subjected to large, significant neglect over not only the 10 years that you're talking about, but I would rather say the 70 years that have elapsed, or 77 years that have since elapsed, since our independence. Foreign policy has consistently lagged on several counts. One, the Ministry of External Affairs simply does not have enough bandwidth. There are just not enough diplomats. Then, what is our major challenge, sir? In a country of 1.4 billion people, what is our fundamental challenge? How do we get quality in quantity? How do we do that? And consequently, as a result of the fact that normal diplomacy has not matured enough to be able to be used in the manner it should, we are forced to go in for these kind of solutions of interpersonal relationships, which work for a while, but you can see what can happen when interpersonal relationships cease because of either political power being lost or because life itself is lost. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. The most important take-home message for me, and I think many will agree with me, that normally we think that India means we have a very myopic vision of our sea. So we think that India means 3.2 million square kilometer of inland. But Vice Admiral sir very rightly pointed out that equally we have got 3.2 million square kilometer of sea also. So India is almost 6.4 million square kilometer, both land and sea. And the next 2 centuries, will be the centuries of the space and sea. You are very rightly said, sir. And I think this maritime awareness will be gradually dawning upon anybody. Probably the importance and significance of land has outlived its utility, and a better future for sea and space is at least for sea is awaiting. And I think we have our little contribution, just like a squirrel, in creating this maritime awareness among our viewers through these SOAFAL lectures. And we are really very, very privileged, sir, and extremely grateful to you for you have pumped so many informations. Actually, it needs some 5, 6 lectures, and so many things are there. I am extremely thankful, and on behalf of the university, and in spite of a bout of COVID, you still came and spoke to us on behalf of the outreach cell and the university. I am extremely grateful to you. I am extremely grateful to His Excellency Dr. Basham Al Khatib, the Honorable Ambassador of the Arab Republic of Syria. We have got our international students from different countries, and all our faculties, deans, directors. Also extremely grateful to our Vice Chancellor. So with these words, I am again thankful and grateful to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I look forward to continuing this and having a longer series, because I can see many questions in the chat box which were not possible to be answered. So please accept my apologies for allowing me to for not being able to answer your questions. But if you like, I'm sure Professor Sharma will be happy to share my email with you, and you're more than welcome to connect with me on email should that be necessary. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So the meeting is over. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.